Up next on the Parth and Pratham show.
It's to fight for human rights because, this is still an issue. It's been an issue since 1619. And that's 401 years now. So I think it's about time that there has to be a change. So I will glad to be part of that.
It's the Parth and Pratham show.
Currently, there's been a huge movement for equal rights due to police brutality cases such as George Floyd. George Floyd was a 46-year-old African-American man who was out shopping on Memorial Day. He paid for his products in cash, but when the cashier noticed that Floyd was paying with a counterfeit, he called the police, and they tackled George Floyd to the ground, stepping on his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, leading to his death. Many have claimed that this was a racially charged act of police brutality. This has sparked many protests worldwide and across the United States.
In Dublin, California, a Dublin high school senior from the class of 2021 has called for social change by participating in a peaceful protest. He is the president of the Black Student Union on the Dublin High campus. Please welcome our first guest, Denel McMahan. Denel, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so let's talk about your personal life. Have you lived in Dublin your entire life?
So I have not, and I actually moved here right when freshman year started, so 2017. So I was born in San Jose. Then I moved all over this area. I moved from Tracy to San Ramon to Mountain House, which is near Tracy, then to Dublin. So yeah.
Compared to other places like San Jose, how maybe diverse or inclusive would you say Dublin is?
I would say that since I lived in Mountain House for most of my active childhood, I don't really remember anything else out of Mountain House and Dublin. But I would say Mountain House and Dublin, are kind of similar in regards to inclusivity. Yeah. So I do think that they kind of both have a similar demographic. There are rising Asian American and Indian American populations. There's also, of course, majority white population, and there's not a lot of African American population. And both don't necessarily really acknowledge the African American populations unless there's movements like this one. So that's why I'm glad that these protests have been taking place, because we're beginning to acknowledge that there's more people of color here that need not support, but just need to be acknowledged.
So it's often implied. So you haven't been in Dublin for a long time, but I think you've been here enough to know that Dublin is more known for being academically focused. But are you shocked at maybe the number of people that turned out to the protest that happened in Dublin?
Yeah, I definitely was very shocked to see how many people came to the protest. I know that there were a lot of scare factors that led people from not coming. I know that COVID-19 is a huge one. In the media, you see a bunch of counter protesters. You see police using tear gas and rubber bullets. Personally with me, I was not going to go because of COVID-19. But I wore a mask, and I was even worried that we were going to march in the middle of the intersection, or the Dublin-Doherty intersection, without traffic going in it, and we're about to get ran over by cars. But when we got there, we found out that the police were going to escort us and block off the roads. So yeah, it was definitely a proud moment to see everyone unite and the police help us to advocate for this cause.
Yeah, just talking more about the protests. I really like how the Dublin protests, the police actually helped because they knew that it was going to be a peaceful protest. So just backing off on that, do you think that the Dublin protest was a success?
I think it was a success locally. Of course, we're not going to have state or federal change from our protests immediately. But I thought that, like I said, it united everyone together, and it showed that we don't stand for police brutality in this city, and it actually made me feel safer as an African American male. To be walking down the street and I won't be racially profiled or subjected to police brutality.
Yeah, I think it made the community more aware of the issue because people were like all around Dublin were talking about it, and on top of that, it showed that like the people in this community support Black people and
Right.
are against police brutality.
No,
So
yeah.
yeah, 100%, I agree with you.
Yeah, and even like when we were walking down the streets, there were no counter protesters. There were people who honking their horns in support. So it was cool to see that like, people were supporting even if they couldn't go to protest.
Correct me if you were wrong, but you played a pretty big role than like the average protester in this protest, right? You did a little bit of organizing. You weren't like on the planning committee.
I was connected with them after, like connected with Faith, and some DHS alumni. But yeah, I was just the protester there.
But you are a huge part of this whole Black Lives Matter movement. You're president of the Black Student Union at our school. So I just want to know what maybe events in your past life in your life have led you to this activism type of role.
Yeah, so like of course, like I've been racially profiled a couple times. I was exposed to racism at a younger age. Like I've been called, the N-word with the ER when I was like 6 by some other kids. So besides that, like one huge event that really shaped my character at Dublin High was when we had that bomb threat freshman year. And that whole event, which I think everyone kind of found out what it was when time went on because it was in the news and everything.
So what Denel is talking about here is two separate incidences that happened at Dublin High School. The first incident was an assault on a African-American teenager that happened because she stood up for herself after she saw a couple of white males saying the N-word. And the second incident is a bomb threat that happened at our school because a Dublin High School alumni was disappointed in the way the police handled that situation.
But it made me want to be a change at our school because it was brushed under the rug by the staff. Number one, we didn't find out until like a month after what it was. But also the fact that when we created like all these events like diversity and stuff, people still weren't taking it seriously. Of course, there are people still going around like making racist jokes, and even people were calling like diversity racist because they weren't acknowledging like a white struggle. I don't know what that is, but it made me like become prideful in wanting to help be a change and make our school more accepting of other people, and also make our school less tolerant of racial insensitivity.
Yeah, so I really like how you basically talked about how people don't really understand the struggle that Black people go through, and they believe that, oh, you're not acknowledging me, and so it's racist. But what's the difference between not acknowledging white people and not acknowledging Black people?
I wouldn't say that like acknowledging white people is kind of already an everyday thing. Like like in textbooks like APUSH, we learned about freaking everything. We learned about like Christopher Columbus coming here, which we know didn't discover anything. What else? Like we learned about the American Revolution. All that stuff is not it's American history, but it's primarily focused on like white people. And then not acknowledging like Black history. Like in APUSH we only learned about slavery for like half like the whole semester. And we couldn't even learn about the civil rights movement because we were put into quarantine. I think that we shouldn't erase other cultures' history because they played a huge part in our country, in building it. There's more to African American history than just slavery and civil rights movement. And even within the civil rights movement, it's not just about Martin Luther King Jr. You got Malcolm X, which I remember reading a page about him in the APUSH textbook. There's Huey P. Newton, like all those people. Like I remember there was only a paragraph about him. Like there's just more to it. So I think that actually acknowledging Black history will make more people aware on campus. And so that's why I'm even working with other students now to talk to the board about incorporating more Black history into history classes.
All right, so basically, I just want to talk. So you really stressed out, and this is an important point that I really want to bring up. It's that popular media, such as like textbooks, books, and things, tend to skip over Black history. And even now, the news media, instead of showing like like really good protests which are peaceful and things like that, they frequently show looters and people who are using the protest for their own personal gain. So what do you say to the media or people who are just who want to exploit the protest and the good message they have for their own personal gain rather than going out and showing their support?
I think that shouldn't, be the goal to loot things. Like, of course, there were like the huge riots in Minneapolis, and now there's actually one in Atlanta where they're burning down Wendy's because there was another police killing yesterday, like last night. So I think that the riots in those areas are more valid than anything because this is where these events are taking place, and even the huge looting at Target in Minneapolis, it was done because that Target was really connected with the police, Minneapolis PD, and they were refusing to sell milk to the protesters who were tear gassed. And it's not like they're trying to steal milk; like they're going to buy it and support the business, but they were refusing to sell it. So that's why everyone started looting, and then it turned into like the huge thing. But and I think that the media is trying to like change the narrative a little bit, which should not happen. With these protests and these looting, they're allowing the message of Black Lives Matter to be twisted, and you're like, oh, look at what they're doing. They're stealing to get their point across. So that's not what's been happening. I've seen some police protests like in LA that have gone down, but the police are still tear gassing people. They're still shooting rubber bullets at them. Like I saw a police shoot a woman in the ankle with a rubber bullet, and she was down. I saw a little kid who was just walking home, not involved in the protests, got tear gassed. So I think that you actually have to like understand like the full side of the situation, and you can't just look at these looters and be like, oh, they're looting because they're violent, or like, and then they're just going to enforce negative stereotypes of African Americans onto them again. But I just think that you need to look at the full story and be aware from there.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, there's actually more peaceful protests than violent riots, but the media does not portray it that way.
Right.
Speaking of peaceful protests, there have been a lot of them going around, as Parth mentioned. For instance, on June 2nd, people took to social media and posted black squares. And then on June 8th, Congress members took an 8-minute and 46-second knee in support of George Floyd's death. Do you believe these forms of protests are as successful as like the other ones that have turned violent when they protested on the street?
Personally, I believe that posting the black square and putting and captioning it #Blackout Tuesday, it brought awareness to the situation, but it didn't really do anything like physically. I know the main goal of it was to post more stuff that was related to Black Lives Matter, which is good because that's educating people and making people aware, and that's what you want eventually. Is just to keep educating people so they can educate someone else. But my problem with it was that there are people that were silent about the whole situation, but then want to post it. I'll post a black square and caption it #Blackout Tuesday, or people just putting 3 letters BLM. But taking it a step further, the people that are posting it are arguing in people's DMs, advocating for all lives matter or blue lives matter, or not even acknowledging the death of George Floyd and not condoning the police officers, but saying, oh, they're talking about the riots. But yeah, I think that there's a problem with that, and I think it represents when something's trending, people just want to feel a part of it, just to have a good reputation.
Do you think it's more the peer pressure that people posted their black squares or did their little donate here on their Instagram stories?
I would say for some people it is, because I was tagged in that little chain of oh, these people support Black Lives Matter, tag 10 people to do it. I was gonna do it, and I was thinking oh, if I don't do it, it's gonna make it seem like I don't support Black Lives Matter. But I didn't end up doing it because you don't need to post to support a cause. If you go out and protest, or if you just keep posting on your story, or posting a picture about it, that's more to me than just, saying you support it.
Yeah, so I know on your Instagram live, just real quick, you were talking about people who showed the support in order to like gain followers or gain attraction or show like, oh, look at me. But in the background, they were actually not doing anything. Do you want to elaborate more on those people? Because they're not necessarily looting or actually stealing, but they are benefiting off the Black Lives Matter movement,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not actually showing support.
Right. No, yeah, like that's like a huge thing going around right now. Like I've seen people go to protests who vandalize things only to take a photo behind it and be like, "Wow, look at these looters! Like they're so crazy." Or like I saw celebrities take photo shoots there. Or I even seen celebrities, take a separate photo shoot away from the protest and say that they're protesting. So I definitely think that, like, if you want to do that, you should just go out and protest, because it's like a false sense of like, I don't know the word, like a false sense of like you're doing something, like, because just taking a photo shoot.
It's like a false sense of support. Basically.
Yeah, right. No, yeah, like if you're taking a photo shoot, like honestly, like what's that gonna do? Like instead of you can actually be at the protest, but you want to take a photo shoot only for your followers, to believe that you're doing something good. But yeah, I think that the real supporters will, will continue supporting it when this is like months behind. And we'll eventually be able to find out who is supporting it for their own benefit once it's not in the news that much anymore.
Yeah. So in terms of longevity, I think that that's the most important thing about the protests, right? So I think for today, the protests have been going on for about 20 days. Mm-hmm. So I'm just asking for your opinion, basically. What do you hope to achieve? Like, in order for these protests to actually be successful and create some sort of change, what change do you actually expect?
I just hope that policies can be made that hold police officers accountable for their actions. Because police they are trained to subdue people, but if that's held for too long, that can kill someone, as we've seen with George Floyd or Eric Gardner. I just think that there needs to be a policy put in place to make police aware of what they can actually do and what they can't do. I know that there's a new law proposed that allows police to intervene with their other police officers, to like tell them, oh, get off of him. So what happens with George Floyd doesn't happen ever again, because those 4 officers are technically guilty by association because they didn't do anything. And they just sat there and let him die. But I think that the protests are working as well, because, in Kentucky, where Breonna Taylor was killed, they passed the Breonna's Law, which basically bans no-knock warrants, which means that, an officer has to knock when they have the right warrant. And I emphasize the right warrant because, Breonna and her boyfriend were the wrong people in that case, and the suspect was already in custody before Breonna was killed. So,
talking about the success of these protests, this like George Floyd killing has captivated like all cohorts, all age groups of the world, and especially we want to focus on the young generation. You're a young person who took part in this protest, but I would say not all the young people did that. They stayed at home and did something that was not related. So what would you say to other young people who are not active in the community, and why is it important for them to be active?
I would say that it's very important for them to be active because, we are the future of this country. And, continuing to educate yourself and become aware of what's happening really, determines how we're going to live in the next, 10 to 20 years. And plus, some of us are almost at voting age. So I think it's good that we need to exercise our rights to vote, because, there are people who complain, like, oh, like, why did this person win? But, when you're not voting and just complaining, you're a part of the problem.
So just in turn more for like the young people thing, right? Black youth groups such as school clubs or even the Black Student Union, they basically have a purpose of like educating people and bringing Black people together, basically. So what effect do you think they have on like educating people, like not Black people, but let's say white people, other people, maybe not people of color, right? But other people about the Black Lives Matter movement. And do you think they have some sort of duty or role to educate other people?
I definitely think that they have a role in schools because, like I was saying, like, Black history isn't really taught well enough in schools, like a normal history curriculum. So I think that, like Black clubs on campus, have a role of making people as aware as they can within campus. It outside of campus, it's the person's responsibility to educate themselves. But, on campus, I think that these clubs should try to, educate everyone because a goal should be to make everyone aware on campus. So, you can avoid things like racial insensitivity or, racist incidents on campus. So, like that's why like we have Black History Month. Like it should be like, the BSU, they should be getting involved with these things so they can teach accurate history and not rely on other people to to make people aware and to teach a watered down version of it.
Okay, so I just have a quick follow-up question on that because we all know that you are the president of the Dublin High School Black Student Union. So will you be doing anything different next year to bring attention to things such as police brutality or like the protests that are happening now? Because at the end of the day, this is history now, right? It's going to go down in history.
No, yeah. So I definitely do have a lot of things planned. I'm like the discussion we had on
Instagram Live.
Friday. Yeah, Friday. I'm gonna have more of those. I'm working with some other clubs on campus, like Elephant in the Room, where we're gonna address the trauma behind it, and just check in with everyone. What else? I'm working with Miss Byrne and Mr. D'Ambrosio to address racial insensitivity on campus, and like how we can prevent these incidents are happening, because there is like that whole day where people are getting exposed for using the N-word in like conversations and on other separate platforms. So we're gonna work with them to see how we can prevent it. And then of course I'm working with those students to revamp the history curriculum. But I think that even just like having meetings and outside of the club, like we can have like assemblies, I would say, like to address these incidents and to give non-Black students the right details of the protests. So I don't want them to think that these protests were to abolish law or to
completely defund the police or things like
that. Right,
that.
exactly, because that's not what it's for. It's to fight for human rights, because this is still an issue. It's been an issue since 1619, and that's 401 years now. So I think it's about time that there has to be a change. So I will gladly be part of that.
Amazing.
I like what you said about education and just getting to know about the true motivation behind all these protests. Are there any actions you would encourage others to take or resources you could give to help individuals become better educated on this matter?
So of course, beyond Instagram, like there's pages that post his history. You can follow some of those. There's the podcast called 1619. We listened to that in Honors English this year. It talks about the effects of slavery after it ended. It's actually a great podcast, and it actually gives a first-hand experience of slavery by a man. He lived up until I think it was like the middle 1900s, like 30s-ish, 40s-ish, and he was actually a slave. And to hear him talk, it's like a shock factor.
Another good thing is like talking to people, right? Because at the end of the day, if people stay in their little bubbles, right, they're never going to experience other cultures, other feelings, and other ideas. So a main thing is like creating a conversation with other people. So say there's someone, like say they're just a person in your community who's a person of color. Just have a conversation with them, ask them about their experiences, and at the end of the day, you will be more educated on how it feels and other ideas.
That's definitely true. To like hear like their experiences and being that ethnicity, and they can also give a detailed history too about where their culture and what they did to get here. So that's definitely another good way. So I agree with that.
Okay, yeah. So basically, Denel, I think you did a great job. This was a great interview. At least it opened my mind up a little bit, at least. And so it's the end of the interview. Do you have anything to plug? Any social medias, any causes, any petitions, any calls to action?
Yeah. So if you want to follow our BSU account, it's Dublin HSBSU on Instagram. There's a lot of petitions that need to be signed to fulfill their goal. I do not have the link to that, but there is like a whole website of petitions that need to be fulfilled where, they have like Ahmaud Arbery's petition still need to be signed. I think that Breonna Taylor just finished hers, which is good. What else? And, there's like...
We'll find the link and then we'll put it somewhere.
But yeah, and continue educating yourself, become involved, and continue supporting the Black Lives Matter movement. So,
all right, thank you so much, Nell. You did a great job.
Thank you. Thank you.